inspired to push through. Because there's a spark in you. Breakthrough or bust. Hello. Welcome back to Breakthrough or Bust. I am so happy that you're here, and I am super happy to have Krista Ziomata here. Krista, would you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited to be here with you. So I am the host of I'm Awake Now What podcast. I've been doing that for a little over 3 years now. And my passion is helping people on the path of awakening and homecoming and expansion find support and tools to help them along their spiritual journey, whether they started out in organized religion or not, and they're just exploring and experimenting and trying to figure out their soul's calling. My podcast sort of brings a plethora of experts from all different walks of life to help people take some wisdom home with them, and also some ideas of how they can cultivate a spiritual experience with whatever they feel most connected to.
And, I was just talking to Krista a couple minutes before we started, and I was saying, I'm so excited for this. This is something that I've experienced in my lifetime, and it's been coming up a lot in my community. So I think it's just coming up a lot. Maybe it's just my community, but it feels like it's coming up a lot. And so I feel like, once again, divine timing, that whole, what are the chances of that? 100%. So I think this is just the perfect timing for this conversation. And I am so excited and super happy that one of our previous guests, Jeremy Todd, introduced us. So he's killer always.
He's wonderful.
Yes. So Krista, tell us a little bit about your story. What was your challenge?
Yeah, my biggest challenge in, getting into adulthood, I think what happens to a lot of us, we start to sort of question our beginnings, where we started. In America, especially, we're hyper organized and indoctrinated in Abrahamic religion. So I was just like that. The only caveat, which I often talk about on my podcast, is I grew up in a sect of the Catholic Church that was a really weird offshoot. There was a lot of austerity, there was a lot of judgment, and a lot of really bizarre things. Like, we used to go and protest at abortion clinics, and we used to go to abortion clinic doctors' houses. We just show up at their house. We used to go to the Democratic conventions and protest there. And when I say we, I mean, like, I was forced to go against my will. Like, as a child, my parents just said, you have to do this. And I had a lot of traumatic experiences, as you can imagine, doing things like that as a child, right? I think I don't have any children right now, but I just think I would never put my children in that kind of situation. We got, verbally harassed. My mom got arrested once for blocking an abortion door clinic when I was like 8 years old, and I didn't understand what was happening. It was like very scary, just weird things like that. And also too, the messaging around your femininity was really bad there. So I spent a good portion of my adolescent life, like most teenage girls do, really loving and hating their body all at once, and not really understanding how to be with themselves, and feeling like you're walking sin, right? Like, that was what was
Don't start menstruating because then you're evil,
all of that. Or like, one I talk about, I have a book coming out this year called The Alchemy of Kindness, and I talk about this situation in which the separation of my femininity really started in my church, because there was a clear defined line that, like, women were bad. And a good example of that is, we had a swimming pool at our church, and they would make the girls wear full clothing to swim, but they would allow the boys to be bare chested and in their trunks. And it's like, why are you covering us up so that they don't lust, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So anyways, fast forward to my late 20s, I started questioning basically everything, my life. I started questioning the church. I started questioning also to the idea that there was so much judgment. And I don't know if you'll talk about this as well with your experience, but there was this really deep otherness that I grew up with when it came to Catholicism and Christianity. And everyone was wrong except us. And I couldn't, for my own mind at that time, just thought like, why did we get to decide that all these
Yeah.
other people are bad, are going to hell, or put blank that for whatever religion you're in.
Hmm.
And that was sort of the crack in it, the judgment piece. And then also watching people in, I would say, high positions in our church sort of have lives that didn't match up with our core values as Christians, but they would find some way to justify it. I didn't like that. That really bothered me. And so
As I nod, I know exactly what you're talking
you
about.
you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's like all these little cracks started to form in my mind and in my solidified idea of what I thought God was and whether I believed in the church. So I just decided to get divorced. I left the Catholic Church all at once. And then I went on this like spiritual experience and
Was your
expedition.
was your marriage really grounded in that religion? And yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
and it was like my partner at the time wasn't willing to leave the Catholic Church.
Hmm.
So although we loved each other very much and he is a wonderful human being, for him that wasn't a decision he was willing to make,
What?
and I
Wow.
had to respect that. I'm not going to sever his relationship.
I just want, like, I'm getting chills. I just want to sit in the brevity of this was so powerful and weighing on your mind so much that you walked away from everyone and everything you knew.
Hmm.
That's, ooh, I'm like bowing to you. That's major. That's really major. A lot of times on our paths, we sort of, I don't want to say alienate, but we sort of
We
lose
isolate.
connections. Yeah, we lose connections. We get to another vibration and they're not there. But and it's hard, but to like just say, no, I'm going to turn around and just go in this other direction away from everybody. It's really
Yeah.
big. It's really big
Yeah. I
and
appreciate you
brave.
reflecting that. Yeah, and seeing that it was very hard, and obviously I'm on the other side of that experience and my life is wonderful now. But one of the things I didn't understand when you talk about this idea of like, changing direction, I was so naive at the time because of the way we had grown up. There was this lip service about love and acceptance of other humanity. And even though we were judging everybody, there was still this underlying thread of like, we will still love and accept you no matter what, because that we're good Christians, right? And I got the test of that. I left that bubble, and I didn't realize it because I was so naive. I thought they would be for me, but I severed everything, all those connections, thinking they might still be there, and none of them were. And like my parents didn't talk to me for about a year and a half. I lost all my Christian friends. I was like a pariah, and I really felt the sting of leaving. I
Hmm.
did, and I'm glad I didn't know that it would be like that, because honestly, maybe I wouldn't have left. I don't know. I just knew I had to leave. I knew I wanted to go do something else. I'm just glad I didn't know.
And I'm going to throw this word out there, which is probably going to trigger people, but if you decide, that you need to explore something else and everybody ostracizes you, that really feels like cult.
Hmm.
Just,
That's exactly what it was. I mean, I didn't know until I was outside of my experience that our weird offshoot was cultic. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
was very brainwashed. It was very insular. It had all of the hallmarks of a cult religion, just sort of glossed in the idea that it was still sort of sanctioned by the Catholic Church. So it was easy to think that it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're growing up, you don't know any better and you're just doing what your parents tell you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Wow.
after that, I mean, I went on this long journey basically to wrap up this part of my story. And I was trying to, I didn't realize, first of all, I was seeking inner peace. I thought I was just asking the question about what do I believe? And what happened in my journey over, I would say, a subsequent of 6 to 8 years after that, after I left my religion of origin and my marriage, I I just wanted to just figure out what did I believe at the core of who I was and what was true for me and where was
Mm.
my compass. And I just found out so many beautiful things about myself and I really came home to myself. I even stopped believing in God for some time because I was like, I want to know if I believe in God or divinity, the creator. I need to know if that's just some idea that was pushed into my head or do I actually believe this. I read a bunch of atheist books. I read everything from the Quran to the Tao Te Ching, like the all of the works from the Hindu religion, just and psychology, everything I could get my hands on. I mean, I did a deep dive self education for like 6 8 years and came out the other side as a Buddhist, basically,
Oh.
with this idea of that there is nothing separating me from you,
Mm-hmm.
and that to really truly be like the best version of ourselves means that there's nothing between you and I. And my work here is to make sure that I love humanity as myself in every single way. And that's kind of like where I shook out at the end.
Mm. What's ringing for me, I've found that in almost every area of my life, I don't fit in with the crowd at all. And religion is one of these areas. I came from a Catholic family, but my father was straight agnostic. He was done with it. Um, and then I grew up in a very Catholic environment and uh, told I was going to hell because I wasn't going to the CCD classes and lots of judgment there. And then I moved, into the South after I graduated college. And that was much more like the Christian and Baptist, where, everything I did, I was going to hell. Like
Yeah, it was
there was
super
just,
fire and brimstone.
yes. And I kind of got to that point of, F it all. Like this is garbage. And so again, with that whole idea of that I don't fit into anything, right? And so you kind of get that feeling like, oh, maybe there's something wrong with me. If everybody else feels okay with the way things are, it must be something inherently wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then some things started to happen. I started to open up again a little bit to, more spiritual things and really got so connected that way. And as I get older, I realized that, the things that I don't fit in, like I was always trying to hide. I
Mm-hmm.
recently did a talk where I told my religious story, and I was terrified. It's not even that big a deal, but I feel like going public and saying I'm anything other than the status quo is terrifying because there's so many people with their pitchforks and torches ready.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, especially here in America, because
yes,
we're such a young country. The
yes,
indoctrination that is also tied to the patriarchy really suppresses the feminine voice. And if you go
yes.
against that stream, it does not like it.
That's it. That's it. But what I figured out is the things that make you different are the things that need to be celebrated. They are the things that need to be spoken up about because you're not the only one. And that's kind of the purpose of this show is giving voices to all these different, topics and people. And you're not the only one. Let's, sing my sister sing. right? And
And to have the courage to break through, like the
that's
title of
it.
your
And
podcast.
what makes you different is quite possibly a revolution that's
Right.
needed to heal the collective.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
oh, I am so loving what you've done. And, you know, the more I connect to spirituality, the more I get the message that question, question everything. Like that's
Yes.
your purpose of being here, is to experience and to grow and to live, not to just follow, instructions,
Mm-hmm.
but to
Don't be a
evolve.
robot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you're here to evolve.
I remember the first time I heard, I started in a yogic ashram after I left my religion of origin, just by, I think, a divine intervention. I think now, I was in this very small town called Spokane, Washington. It was very conservative, very religious, and this yogic ashram just happened to be there. And the Swami who ran it, she had passed on already, but they would replay her teachings and they would have her books there. And she would repeat basically what I would find in the works of the Buddha as well. And she would say, like, you cannot believe anything I tell you. Like, I will teach you everything I know, but then you have to go apply it, and anything that doesn't conform to your own disposition, you have to let it go. And to me, that
Mm,
was the first time when I felt like, not even that they were giving you permission to question, but that being able to question was also part of the spiritual experience, which I say on the podcast all the time. Curiosity is a spiritual practice. And to
yes.
question and be curious is to know your own mind. And if you know your own mind, then you can stand more firmly in your own feet in the decisions you make everywhere in your life.
Free will. Imagine that. Yeah. And I really love that you hit on the topic of femininity, because that is a really big one for me. As a lot of people know, that's a big push. And it's not that I think feminine energy is more important than masculine energy. I just think we know masculine energy is all around us. It's what we're indoctrinated with. But the feminine, no, because we've made it bad, we've made it wrong, we've made it evil, we've made it uh
All the things.
silly,
Yes.
like not important,
Yeah.
inconsequential, all of these things. And when we're so far out of balance, nobody thrives. The men
Mm-hmm.
and the women are
Mm-hmm.
not thriving. We've got to reclaim that love for both. They're
Mm-hmm.
different, but they're both so important.
Yeah, there's so many people that come out of religious experiences that don't realize how wounded their feminine is. And this is men and women. And I was just the same too. I mean, I really started to loathe my femininity and the suppression of the feminine. I mean, I would even go as far as to say it is more important now because of that imbalance,
Yeah.
because we've been force fed masculinity and everything is done in the man's way.
Mhm.
And we don't change anything about our system unless women join us together. And I often talk about the mother wound in my work as well. And we see the effects of the mother wound. I'm saying, WOND, not like her wound, but I guess you could put it there too. But like
Yeah.
the wound of what is happening to our lineages because the mother has been wounded for centuries,
Mhm.
where it has created a very downstream negative effect on women,
Yeah.
meaning like we are rejecting our femininity early, we are seeking perfection, we have mothers who are narcissists, we have mothers who are numbing to their addictions because they can't even be in their own birthright of their own femininity, and all of that goes downstream, plus the hypercritical mother. So we
Yes.
see all of these effects on the feminine that we just have to face it, we have to address it, and we have to like go get all of our sisters who don't want to look at it and say, we need to heal this part of ourselves and we need to regain our strength, because I do believe that in terms of intelligence of the body design and how we are, we really were meant to be the up there at equal parts with the men. There's no this,
Yes.
you know, this, there's no like one is higher than the other because they have more physical strength, or, you know, they're less emotional. You know, we're born with this beautiful spectrum of feeling and sensing that
Yes.
is not even available to some people, and it's not available to men because they've turned that piece of them off, and
Yes.
they have another mother wound that is getting cascaded down their lineages. But it's very important for me that to voice this idea that, like, all of us need to just acknowledge that there's a mother wound living in all of us because of the suppression of the divine, especially in Abrahamic religion. It's huge. It affects us all, and we need to heal it.
Mm.
I was about to say masculine and say fix it, but we need to
Yeah.
heal it.
Yeah, we those are all the little things we don't even realize. We're so programmed into it. And
So
I say this
programmed.
all the time. Oftentimes it's knee-jerk reaction, that passing down. I can't even tell you how many times I've been like, I've gotten that kind of stuff, or the
Mm-hmm.
disapproving stare if I was being too big or
Yeah.
talking too loud, or just
And we're
yeah.
taught to dislike that about each other as women, right?
Yes, yes.
And
And
that comes from the male perspective, not from women to women.
I say that all the time, that originally, women were discouraged. They were dissuaded from gathering because the people were intimidated of the power.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it Women collaborating together
Women are
is a
magic.
powerful thing. And yes, they create magic, they manifest things. And guess what? When they do it in love, you know, we all
Mm-hmm.
benefit. So like,
Yeah, I mean, get conscious women together, and you'll see something beautiful happen like you've never seen before.
mhm.
Like, everyone's vibration heightens, their intuition, their magic, their gifts get percolated all the way to the top, and no one is ever in those situations comparing, contrasting, tallying. It's like, how do I make sure all my sisters right here have the best of everything in this moment, and how do we elevate together? And I think, as a woman, for me, I've always been a tomboy, so
Me too.
that's another part of my feminine piece, is like, I don't know if that's because I was taught to reject my femininity. I just know I grew up as a tomboy. But as I've gotten older and I've healed my own feminine wound, I just feel so much like just a deep well of compassion to try to want to heal this in the women in our society, our global society, because I think we have so much potential that we could tap into. And our world needs us. Like, we've seen the masculine, we're watching it right now play out with Ukraine.
Yes.
We can see that the masculine way of living and breathing is not going to work for everybody. And there can be equanimity. We can say to the masculine energy and to the feminine energy, let's collaborate. It's
Yeah,
not
let's
one or the other.
yeah, I always say it's just that blend, that marriage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it occurs to me, so many women, no matter the ethnicity, race, economic status, almost every woman has been challenged with feeling unworthy in
A
some
hundred
area of
percent.
her life. And when you go back to it, like from the beginning of, well, God thinks you're not as good as your brother, or you know what I mean? When you're looking at these messages that are supposed to be coming directly from the creator, that can feel a little damning. That can
I
feel,
Yeah, I just had Angel Aviles on my podcast. She's a famous actress and director from Mi Vida Loca, and she put into words what I've never been able to describe about the suppression and basically the disappearing of the feminine in Abrahamic religion. She says you have God the Father, God the Son, and the genderless Holy Spirit, and you don't have a woman there. So you come into this religion and you have no representation right out the gate.
yes,
And the stories you hear about Mary, there's two stories you hear about Mary, right? There's Mary Magdalene and there's Mary Mother. And if you grow up in Abrahamic religion, you learn that there was some apprehension from Mary to tell Joseph she was pregnant by the Holy Spirit. So by then she hasn't done anything wrong, right? She didn't do anything wrong. She just got impregnated by the Holy Spirit, the genderless Holy Spirit, but she was afraid to tell her husband. And then you have Mary Magdalene, who was not a prostitute, but in 1690, the Pope at that time decided to make an inference and say she was a prostitute. But we now know through historical evidence she was probably the companion of Christ, of Jesus Christ, who was a real factual person. I know I had a problem with this when I came out of my religion of origin, because I thought he was just make believe, although his divinity was assigned to him after the fact. You know, he lived his life and he was probably not divine. I know that's not a popular idea to say, but you know, Constantine gave him his divinity. But you see those two examples of these two women and how the Abrahamic religion is set up, and you've disappeared the feminine. So how can you love yourself if there's no way for you to see yourself in divine? You just can't.
Yeah. It's funny. I had a conversation with somebody I knew who is, you know, very Christian, and ultimately he is an advocate of non-toxicity in Christianity.
Yeah.
So he, you know, I'm not saying that's not my message, is don't be Christian.
Not all Christians are bad. No.
Exactly. It's just evaluate, where are you? What feels in alignment for you, and not what have you been told to believe.
Yeah.
And one of the things I told him was, when it comes to the Bible, I don't feel very well represented, you know. And he was like, you know, in all fairness, it was written by a group of white men, you know. And so when you think about that, it's like everything is going to be from their perception
at a very specific time in our
exactly.
history as humanity. Yeah. Yeah. And it was very, you know, I think this was the other interesting thing on my spiritual journey, is because, you know, first of all, the Bible has been diluted into different versions depending on what Abrahamic religion you're a part of. And, you know, there were very specific things that we were brainwashed with, or indoctrinated with, that, you know, if you actually go and you start to question, and there is historical evidence of almost everything now. So like the truth can't be hidden. So like you're talking about, like, just follow and do this thing, you know, you can parse out the teachings of Christ if you want to, and take what's good from them. So I think I want to be clear, we're not saying as well that all religion is bad, or that Christians are bad, because there's a lot of really beautiful contemporary loving Christian people. It just gets dangerous in this idea of control and power when those two things are there with religion or spirituality, because we've seen it also, some other random things happen with spirituality.
Yeah.
That's where it gets dangerous.
Yes. Yes. I love that. For me, a big thing is, if your relationship with God, source, creator, you know, whatever you're saying, divine, who, you know, whoever it is that you speak to, that you feel in alignment with, right? If your relationship with that being has to go through someone else, like, you cannot be, you know,
mediator.
Yeah, you cannot be spiritual, religious, whatever, a child of God, without coming to church on Sunday, or without going through me to, you know, then for me, that's usually a warning sign, because I think everybody's, their relationship with the source is so individual, and it's so private, and it's just, you know, and it's like any relationship. Sometimes people give up, and, like, you know, they lose someone and they're like, how could you have taken them? That makes no sense, you know? And there's those hard times, but then there's the good times too. And it just all becomes your relationship with that.
Yeah. I know for me, I ended up just shaking out that I know something had to create us. And I think it's really arrogant for us to imagine that what that thing is, if it hasn't, you know, literally come down here and just like shown up in front of our faces. I know I can feel connected to something bigger than me. I
Mm.
know that I'm always infinitely held and supported. There are things that have happened to me that I just know it had to be the hand of God. But I am, out of my experience, I just thought, like, there's no way I could name it this. There's no way it could
Yeah.
be one thing. It just seems too big. And I'm curious about you for where you landed as well. Like, I still haven't landed on a name that I'm comfortable with, because I think it's too big. I can't even imagine what it is. Like, why would I even put a name on it?
That's so funny you say that. Yes, I am also in that place. I'll say divine, I'll say source, I'll say God, I just kind of use them interchangeably, like, and I feel the vibration and I'm like, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean,
Or
I
sometimes, like,
know.
I'll start talking and I'll be like, oh, hey, God, I'm talking to you. I don't know if you're listening. Because I just feel like, you remove that mediator and you just
Yeah,
tap in, right? And
yeah,
they're listening, and
yeah,
that whatever you're
always.
going to say is going to be heard.
It's always surrounding you. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I know. And there's something I was just going to piggyback on what you said, and I kind of lost it. So I don't know. I'll probably come back in a minute.
Did you find in your journey that you found that connection to source more in nature? Because I find people are
Big
very
time.
keen to that after they
Big
come out of
time.
their experience.
Yeah, big time. Well, so I was already big on nature, and
Yeah,
it was kind of like I figured out that's why. That's why I am.
that's
I
why.
love going hiking. I love my hands in the garden. And it was funny, like certain things would happen. Like on Easter, I would just sort of intuitively go to the garden and start planting stuff. And I realized, oh, because this is source, like this is God,
Mhm.
this is, and it just felt right and it felt good. And, getting out, yeah, growing things and yeah.
I always think it's really fascinating when people come to the podcast. A lot of people have spiritual awakenings in nature.
Mhm.
And I almost wonder if it's because that it's so untouched and messy and flawed and, like, multi-sensory, that it's just undeniable that the beauty of what created us, it just went out there and put all of that into nature. And it's just undeniable that your connection is instant, I feel like, when you go into nature.
And you brought me back to anxiety. That was going to be my key. That anxiety, I think, um, running around, being a good little Catholic Baptist, whatever.
Fill in the blank.
Yeah, is so stressful, especially when it is that very punitive, unless you do it this way. And you could do it with good intentions, but it went wrong. So now you're going to hell again. It's like, and that can be so stressful. And, having people tell you you're going to hell, that was even better. And I noticed that when I finally let go of what everybody else was saying, and I sat back, and I'm a big proponent of, I've learned somewhere along the way, like the front of your body is the part that faces the world. The back is how you connect to the divine. So you kind of
Mm,
sit back, let the downloads, right? They just kind of charge right down the back of your
mhm,
body and let that flow. And the more I did that, the more I felt love.
mm.
And the more I realized this whole idea of punitive punishment is not God. It's somebody's interpretation that somehow stuck. I don't know why. But when I sit back and I feel God or source, or, I feel love.
Mhm.
And that's what feels right.
Yeah, that's a very common experience I think we all have when we come out of our religious experiences. And to tie it back to your point about the unworthiness, is that when you get into these very strict guidelines and these punitive consequences to your behavior as a human being, it starts to grate on your self-confidence, on your worthiness, on your ability to love yourself. I mean, the damage is endless, basically. And it starts to call into question who you are. And I know for me, I thought I was a good person. Like I thought I came to earth and I was a decent person. And I got into this religious experience because our parents put us in it. And by the end of that experience, I just thought I was a very sinful person, even though I was going to church every day at noon, going to confession, not cursing, not drinking, not having sex with my partner before we got married. Like I was doing absolutely everything. And it still wasn't enough for the church and for my family. And this idea of your brother's keeper and calling people out or being, the person who holds other people accountable. Well, who made you accountable to everyone else? Like who gave you that badge? Who gave you
Mm-hmm.
that permission to do that? It's
Mm-hmm.
nobody's business except our own, because then if we give away our accountability to somebody else and we've lost all responsibility of our own lives, and that's very dangerous too.
Oh,
So I didn't like that either. And I could see I'm a very much a root cause analysis person. So when I went and did a deep dive for my book to figure out where all everything came off the rails, basically, that was one of them too. There was this idea of like perfection, but you could never reach perfection. And the goal was always moving. So you got here and then they were like,
mm-hmm.
it's over here now.
Yeah, they keep sliding the carrot further away. Yeah, which is, that will keep people going for so long, but eventually
And
they'll
the
be like,
energy
oh,
that'll expend, like you're
forget it.
talking about, the anxiety and the
Yeah,
energy that you will expend doing that
yeah,
will make you go crazy.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, between that and, you know, not being connected to the feminine, because again, the feminine is about pleasure and joy and,
And
going with the flow.
sensuality. Yeah.
Yeah, sensuality, right? And never allowing yourself to have joy in your life, that's stressful.
Oh my gosh.
That
I
is
didn't
so
have not
stressful.
1 ounce of joy when I was religious.
Yeah.
Because if you had joy, it could teeter on lust, it could teeter on, you know, idleness. Like there were
Mhm.
all these ramifications for like
Yeah.
you could have just a good enough life. And then there was weird stuff about money too. Like I had to
Hmm.
do a lot of work on that. Like money was evil, and like people who had money were evil. Like all of these connotations that are just thrown at you constantly, and you're just you are like like literally like a psychological abuse victim when it comes to those kinds of experiences. And not all religions are like that, and not all Christians are like that, just to say again. but
Yes, yes, yes.
but
And
but
that's,
some of
and
them
I
are
think
bad.
that's really important too. So if you're in a relationship with your religion and your God source, whatever you're saying, and it feels good and it feels right to you, wonderful. That is
Hmm.
awesome. I love it. That's fantastic. But if you're not, it's okay to question. It's not
Hmm.
evil. It's not bad. It's okay to seek your truth. And I think that's what's really important.
Yeah, finding out the truth. And also this idea of homecoming to ourselves, because we come into this world whole and aligned and connected, and humanity, with all of its challenges and all of its misguidances, essentially take us really far away from ourselves, especially women. And I don't mean to harp on this more, but
Oh,
I just
please
feel like
preach.
I'm not tired of talking about it, because I think until men understand how hard it has been for the the woman, and although we've made a great deal of progress, we're still not there. But like
Yeah.
this idea that we just have so much more work to do because of the downstream and the upstream, basically, of how we've been sort of pulled away from ourselves, and and fractioned, as women. And that's the religious piece of it, that's the patriarchal part, that's the societal, and then there's everything on top of that, which is like, we watch celebrity females who look, 25 for the rest of their lives, and we're expected to be like that, and our partners, leave us for younger women. And like, I'm just saying, not that that's happened to me, but like,
Yeah, yeah. No,
that
yeah.
they're all, it's all connected. And it's not
Yeah.
to put any judgment on it, it's just to say let's shine a light on this. There's something more systematically going on here that needs healing, that we need to address, that we need to elevate the feminine today, not tomorrow, not next week, like
Yes.
today.
And so many relationships are challenged now. And I often talk about the yin yang symbol, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
the one side is masculine, but it's got that little spot of feminine. And then
Mm-hmm.
the other side is feminine, but it's got that little spot of masculine, right? So
Yes.
they're so connected. And if one half is damaged, well, the whole is damaged now, right? In that yin yang
Mm-hmm.
symbol. And the woman can't be a queen and the man can't be a king. And until we can both step into our divine power, right? So I'm not talking about just women stepping, I'm talking about men stepping into their divine masculine power.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, they need to heal that little piece of the feminine within them.
Yes.
And they too, I think that the burnout, the fatigue, and I mean women with the adrenal fatigue and the hormone and all of this stuff that we go through now, from so many years of suppressing that femininity in us.
And we
I
can't
do
do it
think that
without
men get
men.
a touch of that, the
Yeah.
stress, the anxiety, the burnout, the just that masculine energy is great because it's take action, it's go, 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 go. But it's meant to be balanced with like, let's have fun and let's go with the flow and let's see where
Mm-hmm.
this takes us. And right when you put those together, it's very harmonious. But when you're just,
Mm-hmm.
bang, 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 go, 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 with no stop, with no
Yeah.
pleasure, with no joy. First of all, there's
Yeah.
no purpose. We just feel depleted.
Yeah, and we can't do it without them. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
the other piece of it. It's like we need the women, all the women to wake up and reclaim their birthright, but we also need men to to see, hear, and acknowledge what we've been through, but then
Mm-hmm.
also acknowledge that they require healing too, because we need them. No one's asking for men to be exited from the equation by any stretch. And I love men personally, so like I don't want men to go away ever either, but we need them as well. And I think when your analogy of the yin and the yang, I always think too, like one of the lessons I learned, um, if we're talking about lessons for your podcast here, that was really significant for me. In organized religion, there's this idea of the binary, always black and white, good or bad, them,
Mm.
us. You see that all the time. That programming is very, very disruptive to the
I
mind.
even just got called out on it not long ago. A few months ago, I said that it was like, well, remember, it's not good versus bad. I'm like, oh, did I just do that? Like, yeah, automatic. Hey,
Life is a
we do
gray
it.
scale. There's a lot
Yeah,
of gray. So even when
yeah,
I think about the yin and the yang, how about we mix up those colors and make shades of gray, and
yeah,
then we're
blend
fully
them.
integrated, right? We
Hmm.
can hold both of those energies at the same time, and that would be really beautiful. Why would I live in
Yeah,
that world?
yeah. Oh, I love that. I see a new
Mhm.
picture, a new
Yeah,
symbol for the yin yang. I love it.
as gray, yeah, as gray paisleys. Yeah, I feel like that would be a beautiful place to be if we could
Mm.
all, men are just as wounded as we are. They just show it differently.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, they launch wars on. No, I'm just kidding. Oh my gosh. Krista, I have loved this conversation. This is so needed and so healing, I think. And I know that you have a community so that
Mhm.
people, if they, feel like they need a little bit more support, they can
Yeah.
check you out. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my podcast is called I'm Awake Now What podcast, and it's you can pick it up anywhere you listen to a podcast, but the ethos of the podcast is to help anybody on the path of spiritual awakening, personal development, and healing. So those are the crossroads of subject matter that I talk about on the podcast with my guests, and they're all bringing their own beautiful experiences. And everyone who comes to this podcast is a certified alchemist, and so am I, and so are you.
Mhm.
We turn our pain into purpose, we transmute
Mm.
and we transform, and that's really the highest form of our own humanity that we can exist in, meaning we're not victimized to the things that happen to us, and we can become empowered, and we can have these courageous conversations that go against the grain and that challenge norms and give ideas to people about how they can present. Or maybe somebody is listening right now and they really are on the fence about leaving, a relationship or a bad friendship, and because it's hurting or injuring their femininity, like maybe today is the day they're going to leave. My podcast community is really a place for people to find solace, to have a curious spiritual practice, have a little bit of fun, because I definitely laugh and joke with my guests, and also gain tools and insights. Because I think the thing I also learned as a lesson is that the one thing that organized religion is good about, key, they're organized, is they give you structures, tools, and times. And while that's good, it can also be very hard, because then you're stuck in this box, right? You come out into spirituality, or you don't want to practice anything at all, you still, your soul will still ask to be nourished. So you have to find ways to nourish your soul. And so the people that come on the podcast are from all walks of life. There's healers, psychotherapists, psychologists, spiritual artists, like everybody teaching you how to cultivate your own relationship with source, so that you stay nourished and organized within yourself, like that empowerment stays internal, so that you can go out into the world and present as fully as yourself, basically.
I love it. And I just want to repeat what you said. Have a curious spiritual practice. Oh, I love that so much. That says it right there. Oh, curious spiritual practice. Beautiful. Krista, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you sharing your story.
You.
This is wonderful. Thank you for being here. If you've been watching or listening, do all the things, like, subscribe, comment, share this with somebody who you think could really use this message, because that's why we come together, to share and to empower each other. So remember to keep pushing through, because there's a spark in you.